All right, make it a bit less than 3 minutes after all. Hello. You can already see the first post I wanted to look at. All right, make it a bit less than 3 minutes after all. Sorry, feedback. All right. No, adjust how I have things set up in OBS a little bit. Give me a minute. This looks weird. Why are you set up like this? Well, I suppose that works. I can just have the post off to the side. And then I scroll. Yeah, okay. That looks like it'll work all right. Okay, we are doing something a little bit different, as might have been obvious from the fact that I am struggling to get OBS set up in a way that actually looks nice. I'm really starting to think I might need a second monitor to be able to arrange everything nicely. But that is a problem for a different day. Today I wanted to do something that I thought would be a little bit fun, namely, I'm going to look at mostly LGBTQ plus related Reddit posts of people asking for advice, and if I have advice to give, I will share my thoughts and opinions. I will go ahead and after the fact type up responses to all of these, at least if the posts in question don't have much in the way of traction, to make sure that these people are getting some kind of written response. But I mainly just wanted to discuss them. I do also have some memes thrown in and a couple of posts that aren't specifically LGBTQ+, but that I wanted to talk about anyway. We're also free in chat to talk about whatever we want, if other things come up, or if there are other topics that anyone comes to think of. This meme is not actually going to be my first post that I'm going to talk about. It was just a nice one to have in the background while I got set up. Let's make sure that changing tabs doesn't mess up my OBS setup. Flipping through the ones I have to see which one I want to start with. I guess I'll just start with the newest one I have opened up. Okay, yeah, that's readable in the OBS, or at least it is for me, and I hope it is for everyone watching as well. Could make it bigger, perhaps. Let's see. There, and then I'll have to scroll as I read, but that's okay. All right. Yeah, I'm still messing with OBS setups, sorry. Good, okay. Let me refresh this to make sure the post is still live. I don't want to go over a post that once deleted. And nope, it is in fact still live and we're all good. This was posted to the r/ftm subreddit 7 hours ago. that's when I was gathering up posts, because that was when I first had this idea. I'll go ahead and read it first, and then we can talk about it. Really confused and sad about losing spaces due to transitioning. So I've started transitioning about 4 years ago when I was 18, and since then, I've really been passing and working on myself and my identity. However, in this, I've lost the spaces I once really enjoyed, and I think it will get worse after college. I go to an artsy school and study animation, so I'm also around other queer people in my community, and that's really fun and enjoyable. However, moving away from my hometown and getting out, I have lost the spaces I shared with AFAB folk and women, even when I started to transition. I also feel I've lost an ability to talk about my issues with people who aren't trans, or don't know I'm trans when it comes to AFAB people. I was talking about an issue involving sexism with my aunt about a week ago, and her only rebuttal was, well, you're a man, so you can't talk about what is sexist. So I've started trying to find more connections with AMAB communities. I couldn't really find anything I've jived with and enjoyed around it, but maybe it's the company I've found. So I joined the LGBTQIA group on campus, and I felt like an outsider there. I don't know what it was, but I felt any time I had talked about my transition, I was just labeled as spoiled or lucky. It can be hard to get gender care where I live if you aren't in the city, so I understand, but it was demeaning. This is all to ask, how did you find your community and acceptance? TLDR, I lost my community spaces and want to find new ones, but I've been struggling to find people I connect with. I have heard other people mirror these sentiments, particularly the sentiments around losing connection with women's spaces or AFAB spaces, depending on the specific situation. As a clarification for anyone watching this who doesn't know, AFAB, AFAB, stands for Assigned Female at Birth, and AMAB, AMAB, stands for Assigned Male at Birth. They don't have anything to do with gender, like AFAB does not mean woman. It just has to do with what one was assigned at birth. Occasionally, you'll also see CAFAB, coercively assigned female at birth, or CAMAB, coercively assigned male at birth. For a while, I was also seeing people use designated male or designated female at birth, but that was a decade ago now, and it seems like we have mostly settled into the AFAB and AMAB terminology. I have feelings on that use of terminology, but that's not strictly relevant to this particular request for advice, so I won't talk about that too much in depth here. I do believe AFAB and AMAB were terms originally coined by intersex individuals, but I don't have a ton of background on that. So I should certainly do more reading on that. Regardless, I have come across a number of other stories of trans men and trans masculine people, especially those who had identified as lesbians before coming out and transitioning, mourning the loss of these communities they had enjoyed previously. I have a couple of different things to say on this. First off, you don't have to give up the communities you were a part of before transitioning. There are a lot of trans men and trans masculine people who continue to be active in lesbian spaces, for example, because they feel like home to them. I don't know if the person who wrote this post has had any interaction with lesbian spaces. That's just the example that I have seen come up multiple times before. Additionally, I understand the difficulty in finding spaces that are open to trans men who pass as men that are also centered around the issues that people who are assigned female at birth tend to face, whether it is reproductive care or like bodily experiences, or even something as simple as fitness. I know that's something that I personally have come up against, is being interested in taking part in exercise spaces aimed at so-called FLINTA individuals. FLINTA stands for, trying to think of the English version, female, lesbian, intersex, non-binary, transgender, agender. So technically that should be open to, trans men and to transmasculine non-binary people, all non-binary people really, all trans people really, but a lot of times those spaces only end up actually being comfortable for cis women, maybe passing trans women, but primarily cis women. Um, People who are actually being inclusive and actually value that should challenge their immediate reaction if they are uncomfortable with you being in those spaces. But of course, not everyone is going to do the work to do that, unfortunately. Here, I want specifically to acknowledge the interaction this person had with their aunt. I should have checked. I assume this person's using he, him, given the question, so I'll use he, him pronouns for OP. Does his aunt not know he's trans? Like, if I'm talking about experiences that women or assigned female at birth people face that I have also faced as a transmasculine person, and someone says, "You're a man, so you can't talk about that," and they know I'm trans, I am immediately going to push back against that. I'm going to be like, "I'm sorry, I have that lived experience. I have also been in that position. I understand what it's like. Sure, I am living a different reality currently, but I know what it's like to go through these things." That's a long way around to say that it should not be as difficult to find community and acceptance as it is. Now, to directly answer the question of how to find community, how to find acceptance if you're having these problems, it's going to help to start online, looking for specifically trans spaces that are catered to people who are further along in their transition. Can be very helpful for gaining a sense of solidarity. Alternatively, pushing back in the queer and trans spaces you're already in that are excluding you for being further along in your transition. If people want to say that you are privileged for having gotten the care that you have, acknowledge, yeah, I'm very lucky to have gotten what I have gotten and to be where I am, but I'm still a trans person and I still face many of the same struggles that trans people who are less far along face. Additionally, being further along in your transition, you can offer advice and guidance to people who aren't as far along in their transition or who are transitioning in a different way than you have. So speaking up and defending your presence in those spaces, while it might feel very confrontational, could ultimately be beneficial not just to yourself, but to those around you. Lastly, look for community outside of your gender identity. Go to book clubs, go to hobby clubs for whatever hobbies you're interested in, try out sports. Look for spaces in which you can bond with people who are similar to you for reasons other than your identity. I see that this person's already gotten 7 responses, so let's go ahead and look at some of the things other people have said. And maybe it won't even be necessary for me to type up my answer. Perhaps other people have beat me to it. Oh, there. All right, appropriate fold 485. Now, I want to say I haven't read any of these responses in advance. I don't know if I'll agree or disagree. Appropriate fold 485 says that this is a pretty universal experience for men. you'll have to get used to the reality that most people don't want your input and don't want you around. I'm already going to push back and say that that's not the case. Men can and often do have fulfilling relationships. Our society tends to make it more difficult because men are conditioned oftentimes not to share their emotions and their feelings. But it isn't always that way, and it shouldn't always be that way. I'm not going to read the rest of this because scanning over it, it looks like the entire thing is doomerism saying that men can never make friends. Yes, the entire comment thread is talking about that. I'm in the way to, I gotta move my little video screen to actually read the bottom one. There we go. Unfortunately, it looks like alone parking might have a similarly negative outlook. Alone Parking 1643 says, I'll put it simply, most men are overgrown schoolboys who like football and taking the piss out of people. I'm not like that, but I am odd. Most men don't talk about anything sensible. If you aren't in their group, you aren't liked. Enjoy whatever random friendships or chats you have. All right, both of these main comment streams are very, very negative and dour. I am going to go ahead and write out my advice to this individual once I get off stream or once I get a little bit further in the process. Do I just want to do it now? I can just do it now. Can you see my typing? Okay, yes. Hey, I am sorry to see that you have been getting such negative responses to this question. I hope you don't mind. But I discussed this on stream. I don't want to phrase this. I discussed this on stream for an LGBTQ advice segment. Not the first person this keyboard always messes me up. There, you aren't the first person I have seen to have this problem. Especially mask people who identified as lesbians before coming out and transitioning. I would not be writing all of this out on stream if it weren't for the fact that no one is currently watching stream anyway, but that's okay. I'm hoping some of my regulars show up pretty quick. Need time to mourn their previous social groups. I don't written if that is relevant. General thoughts remain the same. There are inclusive and it's just a matter of finding the right people. Actually, do I want to include the story about myself? Finding the right people. Online can be a great place to start. Try seeking out groups for trans people who are farther along in their transitions. But you don't have people to talk to are in a similar place to you. Alternatively, take on a mentorship or advice giving role in community book. Person, it may make sense to go out of your way to defend your place in the LGBTQ group you are already attending. People try to dismiss, I can spell, your thoughts and experiences because you are in a privileged, God, can't spell actually, can I? Privileged position. Acknowledge that, yeah, you are very lucky. You are very fortunate to be where you are. But you are still a trans person who faces many of the same issues people who are less far along in their transitions face. You still need support. Additionally, are in a position to offer advice or guidance to people who may need it. Standing up for your role in these spaces benefit not just you, but the people around you as well. Finally, look for groups you can bond with over shared hobbies or interests rather than identity. Try a sport or a hobby club. Sport or hobby club. You don't need to be just you to be able to accept and value you. About your aunt, that you are trans, right? One said, and sexism, because I am living as a man now, I would immediately push back on that. I may have a different lived experience now. I know what it is like to be treated as and seen as a woman. In there, I have lived, affected me in much the same way it affects other women. One advice down. Click. Alright. Again, it looks like I'm going to have to maybe adjust a little bit. Oh, that's fine. Dink. Okay. I will refresh again, make sure this post is still, in fact, existing. Think, yes, it exists. It has 6 answers. So let's give it a go, so to speak. Questions about tea. Hello, everyone. This is from the r/transmask subreddit. Hello, everyone. I am AFAB, gender fluid, and look quite androgynous, but sometimes I wish I could masculinize my appearance just a tiny bit more. Is there anybody that does very small doses of tea for similar reasons? I don't want to fully transition at any point, nor do I want my body to change a lot. I apologize, I don't know much about hormones and how it all works. All I would really want from it is a little bit of a deeper voice, maybe a bit more muscle, and slightly less curves. Thanks, y'all. Immediately, I have to encourage this person to start doing more research, watching YouTube videos from trans people, reading about trans people's experiences, things like that. If you are considering hormones, you really should spend quite a bit of time familiarizing yourself with what they do and how they work. That said, asking the community, asking trans people about their experiences is a decent place to start. I don't use low dose testosterone. I'm on a standard dose. But I have heard of, especially on YouTube, a number of people who do use low dose testosterone. Using testosterone at a lower dose causes your changes to come slower, but it doesn't lessen the intensity of changes. If you use low dose for a long enough time, you will still get all of the same changes that someone on a full dose of testosterone would get. That said, it is possible to go on a low dose of testosterone and use it for a while and then stop using testosterone once you feel you have reached a point where you're comfortable in your transition. However, you can't control how quickly you will get what changes. A lot of it is simply genetic. So, for example, it doesn't sound like the person who wrote this wants facial hair. It's not common, but it's possible that you'll go on testosterone, even a low dose, and you'll start getting thicker, darker facial hair very quickly, potentially before you get the changes you actually want. If you only want some changes, not others, it's a little bit of a gamble because you have to be okay with the fact that you might get the changes that you don't necessarily want and not get the ones that you do want. Especially because this person says the main things they want are a deeper voice, a little bit more muscle, slightly less curves. Your voice starts to drop relatively quickly, usually. All of this is just usually from anecdotes from my own experience. I can't say for sure that everyone is going to be like this. But your voice does start to drop relatively quickly, usually. If you only want a very slightly deeper voice, you could possibly get that fairly quick. Um, Muscle growth and body fat redistribution, however, tends to be something that takes a lot longer. Um, on full dose testosterone, I started noticing muscle and body fat redistribution about 6 months in. Um, but I feel like at this point, about 5 years in, I'm still experiencing those changes. Like I still feel like where fat is sitting is continuing to change and things like that. Part of that may be aging. Part of that might be that testosterone is still doing its thing. Um, all of that said, yes, you can go on low dose testosterone and stop once you've gotten the changes you want. However, you can't control what changes you will get in what order, so you might end up with changes that aren't the changes that you want, and you have to be okay with that when you start it. I'm going to go ahead and look at some other people's answers and see if I feel like it's necessary for me to write out mine as well. Secondary posts, who is a top 1% commenter, impressive, looks like they gave a pretty in-depth explanation. They say the amount of tea you take mainly controls how quickly you get changes, not which changes you get. If you're on a microdose of tea for long enough, you'll eventually end up looking like a cis man, like I said. One option is to take tea for a short while then stop. This might or might not work for your situation. You can't predict the order changes will happen in, and some changes aren't permanent while others are. I didn't mention that, but that is also an important effect, especially if you're specifically looking for changes to muscle growth and body fat distribution. Those are two things that do tend to revert at least somewhat once you stop taking testosterone. So, for example, if you took tea for a few months, your voice might get a little bit lower, and that effect is permanent, so it would stay after you stop taking tea. But fat distribution and muscle gain are not permanent effects of tea, so any changes you got in that sense would revert. You also might have had other permanent changes in the time it took your voice to drop, increased body hair, some facial hair, or bottom growth. If you're okay rolling the dice like that, or if you don't mind the other permanent effects, microdosing for a short time could be right for you. If you aren't okay with that, to be honest, I'd suggest looking for other ways to achieve the things you want. You can become more muscular without tea by working out, especially weightlifting. This will also help your shape be less curvy. You can do voice training to learn how to speak at the bottom end of your range without sounding forced. And OP replies, "Thank you so very much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I didn't even think of voice training." I'm not even going to scroll down and read the other answers. That is A plus, a perfect answer. I literally could not have said it better myself. They covered everything that I thought was important to cover. Wonderful. All right, now we're getting into hot take territory. It should not be a hot take, but it is a hot take, apparently. Let me, again, do my standard refresh, make sure this post has not been deleted by the author. Oh, and it was. Okay. It was locked and deleted after getting 38 responses. Alright, let's go ahead and close that one. Before I get on to the next one, I am going to just very quickly say, yeah, asexual and aromantic people are LGBTQ plus. I mean, they may not all identify as queer, and that's totally fine. People are what they identify as, but if you're not cisgender, heterosexual, and heteroromantic, then yeah, you're welcome to call yourself queer. That has been a topic of discourse for far too long. I was on Tumblr and the wild days of that being the hot LGBTQ plus discourse topic, and I do not miss it. I myself am not asexual or aromantic, but I feel tremendously bad for everyone who is, who had to live through seeing their identity constantly debated and degraded. Going to take a little pause, have a little bit of my tea, and then we can start this longer post as long as it is still existent. Let me do a refresh. Yes, still exists, only has 4 answers, so this is one that I will likely end up writing out an answer to. Just a moment while I check some other things. Alright, this is our first specifically male to female post. From r/trans. I have glossed over this one before. I am going to skip some parts of it that I think might be particularly triggering. Sorry, I'm getting audio feedback again. There. Of course, you can see the entire post on the screen, and I'm not editing that. But I'm going to skip over specific weight numbers in this one. I don't know if I should start HRT. I need help. TLDR at bottom. Hey, I am 23, male to female, and I have been out of the closet for almost a year now. I knew I wanted to fully transition from the start, but I currently have the issue that I didn't want to start HRT before I lose some weight. I have been completely changing my diet and working out every day since the last 2 months. At the pace I'm going, it'll take at least 2 years before I would like to start HRT, and the thought of that is unbearable. I'm thinking about HRT and transitioning literally every day now, and I want to get rid of my parts so bad. Until I lose weight is not a medical requirement, but I want to do it for myself so I can better prepare for surgeries, that I can be the healthiest I can be. Trying to lose weight while trying to put on more on the good parts of my body seems counterintuitive. I'm at a crossroads and I don't know how to go forward from here. Do I just bite my teeth and go ham when working out, or just start HRT ASAP after consulting my therapist and doctor, of course? I'm in a supportive environment, thankfully, so no homemade stuff. TLDR, overweight but want to start HRT ASAP. Do I just lose the weight now and focus on HRT later, or start now? My advice, short, simple, quick, start HRT. You do not need to lose weight before you can start HRT. You can start hormones as long as your doctor clears you, any doctor and therapist you're working with clears you and says, go ahead, you can go ahead. There's no reason to have to lose weight before you start HRT, and you are going to experience muscle and weight redistribution to at least some degree from being on HRT anyway. Will it make you lose all the weight you want to lose before having surgeries? Not necessarily. In fact, probably not, but it's going to do something. Let's see what other people's thoughts have been. Consider the possibility that if you did start, you might feel better mentally and be more motivated to work out. Good point. Personally, I would start sooner rather than later. Do I want to read this entire piece of advice? Oh, is this the last one? Yes, it is. Okay. Personally, I would start sooner rather than later. I'm finally closer to the spot I wanted to be at now, but I'm not fully there. It just took so long that I decided to just start HRT now at 23. Working out also made me bulkier. I don't know how permanent being bulky is, but it kind of sucks. Again, people tend to build muscle differently if they are estrogen or testosterone dominant, so that makes sense. If you're testosterone dominant, getting bulkier is pretty common with working out. This person goes on to say that the younger you start, the better and more pronounced the effects will be. If I started at 21, my dysphoria probably wouldn't have been as great as it is now. If you know, the longer you wait, the more you may regret it. I half agree. I agree that if you have been thinking about starting anyway, you should go ahead and do it. There's no need to wait and then regret the time that you waited. But age does not play as much of a role in how pronounced your changes from HRT are as people tend to think that it does. Tons of people start later and look fine, look great. Like, it does not really make a ton of difference. The advice continues. Best case scenario, as you lose weight on HRT, the fat distribution will start during that. That would make for some great before and after pics. OP replies, OMG, thank you so much for this. This is exactly what I wanted to hear today. I'll sleep a night over it, but I'm certain that I will start HRT soon. Thank you so much again. This has really helped. Given the fact that OP has seemingly reached her own conclusion, based off the advice she's already gotten, I'm not going to write out my own advice for this one. But I'm happy that she's gotten to where she needs to be in terms of self-acceptance to go ahead and start her journey. Give me a minute to affect stream a little bit. It's a very slow day. I'm hoping that changing the title a little bit will draw in more attention. Fingers crossed, hoping that works. Alright. Open. Open. Oh, it's the wrong. Okay, the next one is not a request for advice, it's just a post that I think is important and wanted to share. From r/transmask, we have binding rules. Because too many people don't know them, and they're very important, read especially if you're a first-time binder user. If I missed anything, please add it in the commentary. Binding rules. Wear it up to 8 hours, no more than 12 max. And even then, that's pushing it. I cannot emphasize this enough. Take breaks if you can. Repeat, take breaks. Your body will thank you. Do not go to sleep with it on. Your body will hate you. Dead ass, been there myself, don't do it. Hand wash only. Put it on a hanger to dry. You can put a t-shirt over it if it's not safe for you to have it out. And absolutely do not put it in the dryer, it will shrink it. Only exception is if it's too big, you can toss it in there for 15 to 20 minutes tops. If it's your first time with a binder, wear it in increments. It presses your chest and makes breathing harder. You can easily get lightheaded. Start with 10 minutes, work your way up to 15, 30, an hour. Do not wear it out a whole day until you're comfortable. A tip, after slipping the binder on, move your chesticles up so that the nipples are resting flat against the binder padding instead of pointing down. That will even out the pressure and make it more comfortable to wear. Most of this I agree with. For whether you can machine wash binders and also for whether you can dry them, check the care instructions for the particular binder you have because different brands are different. I want to add a couple of pieces of my own advice. I binded off and on for several years and binded pretty consistently for about a year. So yes, absolutely do not wear it more than 8 hours. When you do take your binder off, whether it be off for the day or for a break, stretch. The binder is going to be pulling your shoulders forward all day. Stretch your shoulders back. Have a partner or friend help you with that if you can. And then also, it's very hard to clear phlegm out of your lungs while you're binding. So once you get that binder off for the day, do your stretches, do a big cough. It's going to sound awful, but you want to do a big cough and clear anything that has gotten trapped in your lungs and in your throat from binding all day out. So a couple nice big coughs to get everything loose while you're stretching. This person says that you should not sleep in your binder. Very true. You also should not work out in your binder. You should not do anything more vigorous than just your everyday activities while wearing a binder because it constricts. In the same way it constricts your chest, it's constricting your lungs. It's going to be harder to breathe, and it's going to be a lot of extra stress on your body. If you can, get a nice sports bra for working out and some loose-fitting clothes and just do your best to be okay with that. You do not want to bind while you are working out. Similarly, don't bind while having sex. It's not a good combination. Sex is exercise in the same way that exercise is exercise. You need to be able to breathe and move around freely. Don't put your body into a position where you're more likely to get injured. You don't want to bruise your ribs or injure your lungs. Let me see, do I have any other tips that this person missed? I have also heard, and for myself it was more comfortable to do this, rather than just lifting your chest up and having it flat, lifting it up and then to the side can give a more peck-like appearance and also be more comfortable. But experiment with what works best for you when binding. Oh, a tip that should essentially go without mentioning, but look for quality binders. Don't buy the cheapest thing on the market. Read reviews and things like that. Unfortunately, I don't know what the best quality binders out there are right now because it's been years since I've had to bind. I used to swear by GC2B, but I've heard their quality has declined quite a bit. Underworks is another big name. I personally was never a fan of them when I was binding because the material was stiff and scratchy. They might have improved since then. I just don't know. Additionally, make sure your binder fits you. Using a binder that's too small isn't going to bind any more effectively. It's just going to be more uncomfortable and more potentially dangerous. As always, let's see if the people in the comments have any other advice. There's debating over whether you can and should put your binder in the washer. Is that all? How many answers did this get? Only 3 responses, so that is all. I'm going to go ahead and type up my own advice. I have some advice to add. Don't mind. This keyboard messing me up again. Don't mind. But I also used this post as a jumping off point for an and for a queer advice discussion I was having on my live stream. Anyway, which advice had I started with when I was talking out loud to you guys about this? No, it's escaped me. Yes. In addition to taking breaks, when you do take your binder off for the day or even just for a break, it is important to stretch, especially the shoulders. Binder is pulling your shoulders forward all day. You need to get some looseness and movement into them. Also, do a big cough to clear your lungs while binding. So you want to take the time to clear any phlegm out that has built up. I already said in addition. Along with not sleeping in your binder, don't work out in it. Thanks. Don't do anything that is going to raise your... Don't do anything that is going to make you breathe heavily, essentially. Your lungs will be constricted, make everything more difficult. You also don't want to bruise or otherwise injure a rib. Make sure your binder fits right. Your binder won't bind better. It will just increase your risk of injury, not to mention discomfort. Ta-da! Another piece of advice given. Alright. Bing, bing, bong. Once again, doing the classic, refreshing the post, making sure it still exists. It does. It already has 6 answers. We're just moving quite along, aren't we? Right along. From the r/trans subreddit, this individual asks, how long before top surgery? I've been on HRT for 14 months and I'm curious when I should consider top surgery. Should I wait longer? I'm worried it won't be covered in a year. I'm in California on state insurance and want to know what you guys think I should do. I can't give across the board advice for everyone, but I got top surgery 6 months after I started testosterone. That's not necessarily common, um, but there isn't a reason not to do it that early from what my doctors told me and from everything I've heard. A lot of times, insurance will require that you wait 12 months, but that's less for a medical reason and more because insurance is in the business of putting up blockades in front of people's medical care. Um, I'm sure they have some kind of theoretical like explanation for why they do that, but from what I know, there's no reason to wait that long. I mean, a lot of people. No, that's not true. Not a lot of people. There have been several people at least who have gotten top surgery without ever being on testosterone. Ash Hardell comes to mind. There's no need for you to be on testosterone a certain amount of time before you do top surgery. Let's see what people have said. Doodaleza, I have no idea if that's the right pronunciation of that username, says I'm just a little bit further in than you, and I'm still. Oh, okay. Um, all of my advice um, was tailored towards transmasculine people. And I see now that this person is apparently trans feminine. So that changes all of my advice. Um, I do not personally know as much about top surgery for trans women and trans feminine people. Um, I have heard that most breast growth takes place in the first 2 to 3 years, but can continue, of course, past that. So I don't have a specific answer for this individual. Let's see what other people with more experience in the matter have said. Doodaleza says, I'm just a bit further in than you and I'm still seeing growth. It's probably worth waiting or trying progesterone first. Ultimately up to you though. There isn't really a downside other than it potentially being unnecessary as far as I know. From everything I've heard, that sounds right to me. Um, I have heard about individuals, about trans women who have gotten top surgery, who've gotten implants, and then had to later have them removed because of the amount of breast growth that they ended up having. But that does not seem to be a super common issue. It just happens sometimes. One person says, wait 5 years. The other says, if you want to be bigger than you currently are, you may as well start that process now. You might miss out on a bit of natural growth, but you're going to be happy with your chest, so it doesn't really matter, honestly. Um, I don't think there's any way that having top surgery, at least not if you're having implants, would cause you to miss out on natural growth. So I think that the first advice there was probably the most helpful. But again, it's a less clear cut, this question is a less clear cut issue for trans feminine people than it is for trans masculine people. Another one to refresh. Let me go ahead and see how many more questions I have pulled up. A ton. I have a ton. So we can keep going as long as I feel like it. do wish my regulars would show up. I miss them. Alright. How do you deal with tired of being trans stage after a few years on T? This is r/FTM. I've heard a lot of this thing and expected this to happen after a while. The moment dysphoria vanishes to an extent, you can forget about it and forget the amount of suffering pre-T that actually brought you where you are creates the room for another problems. And one of them is how hard it is to get therapy, how hard it is to move to other place where it's more accessible, or so it seems, and potentially end up with even worse situation in case of significant political changes. Not mentioning regular stuff like supply issues, pharmacies, manufacturers' strikes, and so on. The fact I can't rely on bare minimum in terms of stability makes me really angry. However, there's no way back, as I tried once what life would look like without 24/7 agony of simply existing. I am not in the stage of full relief yet, but these thoughts keep popping up, and I expect them to intensify as I shift focus from my inside problems to the outside aspects. What helps you with this kind of mood? Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're doing well today. Our activity of the day is just going over and discussing various LGBT advice Reddit posts. But I'm very happy to have you here. It's been a slow day. All right. This question really has a few different questions tied up in it. I have only really felt the tired of being trans feeling a couple of times, but I have heard a number of other people talk about it. The main one that comes to mind is, I think it was Mia Mulder, did a video about detransition in which she talks about not necessarily being tired of being trans, but being tired of doing trans, of having to keep up with all of the upkeep and the difficulties that go along with living as a trans person. And that sounds a lot like what this individual is talking about in this post. It's not necessarily that he is tired of being trans itself. This is in the r/FTM subreddit, and the individual hasn't otherwise specified, so I'll be using he, him for discussing this post. So it sounds like this individual, he isn't tired of being trans, but he's tired of dealing with all of the difficult aspects of being trans. I don't have advice on how to stop feeling that way because the world is very difficult for trans people. I do think that if you are feeling tired of the state of the world, the best thing you can do is seek out support and friendship with people who understand the issues that you're going through. Hello. I am sorry that you haven't been doing too great. Are there specific things causing your panic attacks, or is it just school stress? I had panic attacks at school? I've had panic attacks about school, but never at school, I don't think. My laptop. I'm going to see what other people have given as advice to the OP of this post. Clown with Tentacles, which is a very interesting username, says, Just kind of make peace with the fact that there are some things you can't affect, and remember, literally everyone has inconveniences in life. It's also probably easier for me to say because the political situation can't get any worse. I'm in Russia, lol, for trans people. Yeah, sometimes you just have to accept the situation you're living with to the extent that you can and keep your head down. That is not the most hopeful advice, but I can definitely see and understand where it's coming from. Um, Baby Cake 2004 suggests you can find minor joys in daily life instead to distract yourself from the really scary world we live in. I feel like that's another tactic that I take. You bake bread, go for walks in parks, and learn to play an instrument or speak a new language. You find good friends who will support you no matter what, and then you spend time with them swimming, watching movies, or going on long drives at night. I'm not saying it fixes everything or that you just give up on fighting for yourself. You still struggle with the things you listed. You still have shit days for sure, where all you can think of is if in 6 months it'll still be legal to be you. But you start to think a bit more realistically. You save up money to leave slowly over time. You further your career, you fall in love, you find pharmacies that do have your medication in stock. You look in the mirror, and while you don't always love yourself, you at least are happy that you're alive. To put it more simply, you keep going and find happiness where you can, because what other choice do you truly have? I love that answer. I resonate very strongly with that. Hello, I am just very sorry that you're dealing with that. That sounds very, very difficult. I hope that you are getting some degree of support, either from the school or your family, friends, people around you who care about you. Um, Perhaps a school counselor, though, at least in my experience, school counselors weren't great with any type of actual mental health problem. But I understand how debilitating panic attacks can be, and I really hope that you're not having to deal with that all alone. There's one other piece of advice from this particular post that we are discussing. Um, Disastrous Mechanic 5 says honestly just allowing yourself to be annoyed, frustrated, upset, etc. Being able to rant and ramble about how it sucks having to deal with certain things can help a lot, especially if you have very understanding people. I found it easier sometimes talking to other trans people, IRL or online like this, so that I also don't have to explain the how and why behind everything. You can simultaneously be grateful for what you have with transition support and annoyed that you need it in the first place, or the hoops that have to be jumped through. I'd really just recommend trying to find outlets with friends, family, or professionals to talk about these feelings. Something like journaling has also helped me a lot to have a place to rant about all my annoyances with being trans than just shutting the book and doing something else. I'm glad that you were able to get a doctor's note, Hello. That's a good step in the direction of getting some degree of support, or at least being able to take time away from the environment that is stressing you out. Looking at all of these responses together, I'm very happy that people had so many helpful, caring things to offer OP. We've seen in a couple of these answers that people are recommending support, finding people that you can talk to, um, as well as finding joy in the things that you can still take joy in, but not trying to hide the fact that you are upset. I think all of that holistically is a great method for anyone who is dealing with this kind of situation. Um, reading through this device and thinking about it a bit more holistically, although I have never reached the point where I feel tired of being trans or doing trans, as Mia Mulder would put it, I have reached points where I felt just utterly despairing over how difficult it can be to be trans and not knowing how the political situation is going to develop or potentially get worse for me and the people I care about. And I think a lot of this advice is stuff that I needed to hear and is stuff that I think about quite a bit. Um, just the finding joy, finding support, while also allowing myself to be upset when that feels like what I need to do, but also trying to take space away from the ongoing issues when that is what I need to do. It's a delicate balance and something that's always changing, but it is always easier with support. So I'm going to return to that again and again as my key piece of advice is finding people who you can have around you who love you and will support you and who understand or are willing to try to understand the issues you're going through. I am not going to close this question right away because I want to come back to it and maybe recommend the Mia Mulder video. But that'll require me doing some searching to find it. So I'm going to write up an answer for that one off stream. I'm debating if I feel like I have anything to say about this next question. It looks like it has already been answered by someone who has far more experience with the uh, experience than I have. So this question I'm actually going to skip because I have less experience in this question than the people who've already answered. I imagine that having ADD would be difficult. I do not personally have ADD. Um, Girlfriend has ADHD. I'm unsure how different those experiences are. Um, but I give you my sympathies. I'm going to need to take a brief break from talking because my throat is getting sore because I've been giving advice for an hour and a half. I have hot tea, so all will be good. Our next post is a celebratory post rather than an advice post, so looking forward to that. I have gotten some notifications here on Reddit, so I'm going to check those out. Nice. Perhaps at the end we'll have to check in on responses and reactions I've gotten to advice that I've given thus far. All right, we're getting into some of the Christmassy posts, which is exactly why I wanted to do this today. So we have a celebration post in r/trans from Competitive Book 2273, who writes, I still can't believe how much I lucked out in terms of being in such a positive and supportive working environment, especially in a deep red state. Sorry. My executive director was in on it and introduced the subject to everyone. I think I skipped the title. So let's start over to do this all together. Okay. In the r/trans subreddit, we have a celebration post by Competitive Book 2273. I came out at my work's Christmas party. I still can't believe how much I lucked out in terms of being in such a positive and supportive working environment, especially in a deep red state. My executive director was in on it and introduced the subject to everyone as the hiring of a new employee. I've been working there since my junior year of college, after which I got up and introduced myself with my new name and pronouns for the first time. We then talked about how we're going to approach handling clients when they ask to speak with my dead name. And the way we devised shouldn't out me unless I choose to do it with specific clients. I received lots of love, support, and compliments on my name that day. It's been quite exhausting masquerading as someone I'm not every weekday at work, and it has made work feel much more emotionally draining than it already is. I don't go back to work until the new year begins, but for the first time in months, I can say I'm actually excited to go back to work. I love hearing positive stories like this. I love hearing about people being supported, not just by the people who are closest to them, not just by family and friends, but by everyone in their life, including those in the workplace. And I'm going to tell this person exactly that, because I think they deserve to hear that people are celebrating with them. I hope you don't mind. Oops. I hope you don't mind. I cannot type on this new keyboard. I hope you don't mind, but I shared this on a live stream on my LGBTQ themed holiday live stream so that myself and my very limited can I spell? No, I can't. Viewers could celebrate with you. I'm so happy to hear about trans people being supported not just by the people closest to them, but by everyone in their lives, including those in the workplace. Congratulations on the supportive workplace, and I hope you have a great time going into the new year. A big cheers, a big celebrations to people having positive experiences. We all need support in our lives, and I'm really happy when people get that in places that might otherwise be adversarial. Alright, I know. Let's see, where should I put my. Sorry, I'm adjusting my screen. Click. Okay, that works. Alright, I think that works. Let me see how it actually turns out looking on. That's actually worse. Never mind. Alright, I know we just did a celebratory post, but let's go ahead and do a shit post from r/curated Tumblr. I love this meme. It's cute. I've seen it on Tumblr itself. So it's phrased like a one person is saying, "I am a lesbian, 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 girls," and another user replies with them, "It's okay. Take your time." Just makes me giggle. It's good Tumblr humor. Beep. This next post I've had open to discuss on stream for a couple of days because it's a big one. Not that it's a long post, but it's a heavy one. In r/FTM, Red February asks, would grad school in Texas be too dangerous? I know from that question alone, a lot of us are probably having some immediate feelings. As you might know, Texas, along with Florida, are two of the don't travel states for trans people in the US, according to Aaron Reed's risk assessment map. Red February writes, "Hi all, I'm applying to grad schools right now, and one that my boyfriend suggested, we're applying to places together, was University of Texas Austin, UT Austin. It has a really good program for what I'm studying, and several professors have said they may be able to offer me funding. However, I'm on the fence about it because I don't know if I'd be safe living in Texas, even if I'd be living in a liberal city. If it helps for context, I currently live in a swing state and am pre-T, no document changes yet, but I plan to start T and document changes ASAP once I come out to my parents, which needs to be very soon as I'm afraid of potential changes in healthcare accessibility once January rolls around. I've just been putting it off because I'm afraid of what their reactions might be." Between the abortion ban and the anti-trans laws and sentiments, I'm concerned I'd constantly feel unsafe and paranoid in Texas. My boyfriend has reassured me that it wouldn't be that bad since Austin is very liberal, and if I needed an abortion I could just fly out of state. I love him, but I think he as a cis guy doesn't quite understand the gravity of the situation, so I was hoping to get some insight from you guys. Is Texas too dangerous to live in as a trans man, even if I'm in Austin? How much of the fear around Texas is realistic, and how much is fear-mongering or exaggeration? Any insight would be appreciated. Alright, well, I'm definitely going to write out an answer to this particular question because I need to link, at the very least, Aaron Reed's trans risk assessment map. Because at the end of the day, the immediate answer is do not apply to a grad program in Texas as a trans person right now, especially if you are considering starting hormones and document changes now. There is no guarantee, in fact, it seems rather unlikely that you are going to be able to maintain access to testosterone in Texas. And if you do go through document changes, if any of those changes are made in Texas, they may end up being reversed. Texas might not let you make the changes in the first place. And even if they do, Texas is one of the states that has been collecting lists of people who have changed their gender or their name on state documentation. Overall, there is a lot of potential negativity there that you just don't want to voluntarily face. Um, yes. Look for these laws, look at these laws, look at these risk assessment maps, things like that. Go over them with your boyfriend. If he still tries to pressure you into applying to this school, then he isn't respecting the danger you potentially face as a trans person. I'm sorry to say it, but if you've expressed that you are afraid for your legal rights and your physical safety and he isn't appreciating that, that's quite a red flag. The fact that Austin is itself liberal is not going to be able to protect you from state laws. Let's see how other people have talked about this. Iced Auto says, "I personally never considered living in a hostile state that did not want me there, and whose elected officials were doing everything in their power to prevent me from living a safe and fulfilling life. Take your talents and treasures to a community that values your humanity. Please also make this decision based on what's best for you, academically, professionally, safety, emotionally, medically, etc., not your boyfriend. If that means long distance temporarily, you two can work it out." Thumbs up for that one. It says a lot of my own sentiments. Silver Sunrise says, "Austin is generally a liberal city. I have family there and have felt very safe when I visited. However, the city can't protect you from the state's laws. If they ban transition care, it won't matter that people are accepting and kind. I don't think you can change your gender marker in Texas, and they've made lists of people who have tried to. Visiting would be fine, but I wouldn't want to live there." Again, another A+ response. Punbra says, "I think if you have the option to stay out of Texas, you should avoid it. I've heard wonderful things at Austin from my queer professor, but you have to keep in mind kids at UT Austin are relocating to Austin, largely from other parts of Texas. IMO, you should visit the campus if you can to feel out the vibes." That might also be good advice. Again, my worry is that it's less about the campus and the school itself. It's more about the fact that you are going to be subject to the state laws when you are there. If the state of Texas says we are not going to recognize document changes, then you're not going to be able to have your documents changed. If testosterone or other gender reforming care becomes banned, then you're going to be out of luck if that's something you want to pursue. You have to make this decision based on what you want, what is going to be best for you. If you absolutely want to study at UT Austin and it's worth it to you to potentially put off your transition to do so, then go for it. But I don't get the feeling that that's the case. Mighty Dino 27. As someone born, raised, and currently living in Texas, I would not recommend unless you pass completely. I'm about 11 months on T and my face has been passing since month 2, but I do not bind often because of sensory issues, and I definitely get looks if people notice my chest. Also, I just don't like Texas in general. I think this place is miserable and all our politicians hate us here, but Austin might be more chill than other areas. I would definitely recommend visiting the campus to suss out the vibes. Again, it's not just about the campus, it's about the state laws that are going to affect you. Are you even legally allowed to use the bathroom that aligns with your own actual gender, with your identified gender in Texas? I don't think so. Of all of these responses, and there are 8 of them, there is only one saying that yes, studying in Austin would be a good idea. That is ThinkGround9224, who says Austin is the safest place in Texas to be at. All of our trans resources reside in Austin. Trust me, you'll be fine. I'm a trans man who lives in Houston. I'm not going to discount someone's lived experience. Perhaps Think Ground is living a wonderful, fulfilling life in Texas. Again, I can't help but fear for regulations and laws at the state level. If things get passed, you're going to be subject to them, even if you're living in the safest, most liberal part of the state. This is another post that I'm going to keep open to write or reply to off stream. The next one is a medical question, so I gotta preface it by saying I am not a doctor. I'm not giving specific medical advice. I'm just telling you what my doctors have told me and what I have heard about testosterone gel. In the r/FTM subreddit, lobsters on skateboard posts couldn't find anything on Google. Does applying T-gel in the stomach area cause uterus issues? I usually apply my T-gel on the stomach area since it's generally the most comfortable spot. I vary between the upper and lower stomach. However, I want to have kids someday, so I'm worried how it could affect the uterus. I doubt there's any research for this, so anecdotal evidence or discussion is fine. I just want to know if I'm being paranoid. There's two things I need to address here. First, let's talk about wanting to have kids. If you want to have children and you're on testosterone, being on testosterone at all can make it more difficult for you to have children. Not always. Testosterone isn't itself a form of birth control, and you shouldn't use it like it is, but being on testosterone can make you less fertile and can make you have problems having children down the line, even if you go off of testosterone. It does not matter where it's applied, it can have that effect. Now let's talk about applying it to the stomach specifically. Applying testosterone to your stomach isn't going to make it more or less likely that you have fertility issues going forward. Where you apply your testosterone doesn't make too much of an impact beyond how much of the testosterone your body absorbs. When I started using T-gel, I was told to apply my testosterone to a part of the body that has a lot of muscle close underneath the skin. So I was told to apply it to my shoulders and upper arms. I was also told that you can apply it to your stomach and have it be equally as effective if you do not have a lot of fat on your stomach. If you're applying it to a part of your body that has a thick layer of fat over the muscle, then less of the testosterone is being absorbed directly into the muscle where it needs to go. So again, the main effect that applying your testosterone in a different place is going to have is on how much testosterone is going to be absorbed. It will not directly affect that area of the body more than it would any place else in the body. However, being on testosterone at all can affect your fertility long term. Let's look over people's advice on this. There's two answers to this, so I'll just go ahead and read both of them. OK Emphasis 42069, good name, says, my doctor said research shows it doesn't really matter where it's applied, it all absorbs into the bloodstream. Obviously don't apply it directly to genitals because it's for external use. She suggested shoulders, abdomen, legs, etc., and applying to one area will not masculinize that area any more than another one. I'm going to read that last line again to emphasize it. Applying your testosterone to one area will not masculinize that area any more than any other place on your body. I have seen people mistakenly believe that if they apply their testosterone to their face, they'll get facial hair faster. If they apply it to their genitals, they'll get bottom growth faster. That is not how it works. Testosterone works by getting into your bloodstream, not by just sitting on the skin itself. Like, the skin itself isn't where that's happening, so you're not going to masculinize that one area of skin more than the rest of your body. Levy Ethan says having low E levels, which can be caused by being on T, can cause urogenital atrophy, which can include the uterus. Atrophy is generally treatable and reversible. There is a Reddit called r/seahorse dads that are about trans men trying to get pregnant, so they might have more information. Between those two answers, I feel like most of what I've had to say is covered to the point where I'm satisfied. I don't feel like I need to write out my own answer for this one. Um, I'll just go ahead and give both of those answers upvotes because I think together they cover the main points that I wanted to cover with this one. For our next one, we have our first post from r/non-binary. I'm going to do one more question and then I need to take a short break to make more tea. So, in r/non-binary, AX9 says being AFAB and non-binary. Is it weird I'm glad I was born AFAB? Like, I personally identify as non-binary and use he/him pronouns, but I feel like I wouldn't be as happy with my body if I was AMAP. I like how I'm shorter and my features are softer, but I also like being androgynous and having masculine clothing and hairstyles. No, there's nothing weird or wrong about preferring one or feeling like you would prefer one sex over the other sex or liking traits of a specific sex. Um, Depending on the exact like aspects of your dysphoria, it could make sense that you could see one sex as being an easier starting point than the other. I'm using very binary language here. I know that sex is not a binary and that people are intersex, and also that even within the binary sexes, there's a lot of variation. But I'm saying, no, like any trans people can have preferences for certain aspects of one binary sex or the other, and it's not strange or like bad to have some of your preferences line up with what your assigned sex at birth was. I I have any aspects of my assigned sex at birth that I would prefer over the other? Honestly, it's an interesting question that I hadn't really thought about. If I could have chosen my assigned sex at birth, I I mean, that's complicated because I would have, I think, preferred to have been socially designated as a boy, but separating gender from sex entirely, regardless of what my assigned sex at birth was, I would have ended up transitioning, I think, um, to different extents and in different ways, obviously, but I really think that I am happiest in a body that is like specifically trans. Um, so I can't say I would have necessarily preferred one assigned sex at birth over the other. Um, I think I would have had less physical dysphoria had I been assigned male at birth, but I still would have dealt with some dysphoria and definitely some social dysphoria either way. So I can't necessarily say that I have a strong preference, but it's not weird, unusual, or bad to have a preference. Let's look at what some of the answers for this one are. Gay Witchcraft says, well, I'm non-binary and wish I were AMAB. If I have a preference for what I wish my assigned gender at birth was, I don't see why you shouldn't. Essentially the same sentiment that I had. Rukin, they each have their pros and cons. M63, working on recovering hair loss. It's working slowly. And still generally look male after almost 3 years on E. I don't know if I would trade away my life story, but there are a few things I'd like to change. Character Stretch says, actually, it's probably easier for you to be kind of masculine. I'm not super sure what they mean by this. Um, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I do think it's really interesting that the sort of social, societal image of what it is to be androgynous has changed over time. I mean, if you look at David Bowie, for example, the I like key examples of androgyny used to be people who were assigned male at birth and like physically at least somewhat masculine, dressing in more feminine or more flamboyant ways. Whereas since the 2000s, but definitely since the 2010s, there's been this more social image of assigned female at birth individuals, or individuals who are more physically feminine, dressing in more masculine clothing as the like end all be all of androgyny, especially if they have like face piercings and dyed hair and whatnot. Um, you could chalk this up to the Tumblr influence. I don't know where else it is prevalent. I suppose on TikTok nowadays. Um, but I have been thinking about that sort of social shift since the 2010s, since I came out as non binary and was coming up against the difference between what I had as androgyny in my mind, which was definitely the older, more David Bowie esque androgynous look, versus what I was seeing on Tumblr as the epitome of the androgynous non binary look. And last answer, Bulky War says, I don't think that's weird at all. I don't think I have a ton to add actually in the answers to this post. It's fine. Obviously, you can prefer your birth sex, you can prefer uh, not your birth sex. Like, especially when you're non binary, the well, I was going to say, especially when you're non binary, but honestly, just if you're trans at all, the combination of physical traits that make you feel the most gender euphoria can be just about anything. I mean, you can be a trans man and prefer having a vagina despite the fact you are a man. You can be a trans woman and not necessarily want to have breasts. Like, even as a binary trans person, you can prefer certain aspects of your sex assigned at birth and still have that be completely fine. So, as a non binary person, of course, you can have that degree of flexibility. Also, I feel weird saying, of course you can, of course you're allowed. I mean, it's your life, your identity. You don't have to explain your preferences or your labels or your experiences to anyone but yourself. I'm going to close this question. I am going to switch over to my waiting screen so that I can make myself more tea because my throat hurts from talking so long. Hello, hello, we are back. Again, taking it a little bit slow, getting back into the next question because my throat's getting sore from talking so much. People in chat, how are you doing today? It's great to have you all here. Alright, I've refreshed to make sure this post still actually exists, which it does. In r/LGBT, C Pomegranate 1122 posts seeking recommendations, advice on ways to support my trans niece. My niece, 15, has recently transitioned, male to female, and is having some challenges. I am looking for recommendations on how to help. We're both in the community, however, I am cisgender and have not had similar difficulties and wanted to ask those who may have been through something similar. Hygiene seems to be an area that is hard. Most male-smelling products are something she avoids, and she does need body care that helps with odor rather than providing fragrance. Showers in general seem to be a challenge. She's interested in exploring more feminine clothes, underwear, bras, and cosmetics. Have there been any brands that are particularly great for this? In general, any recommendations for Christmas gifts that may help show support? Thanks, everyone. This is a very sweet question to see. It's always wonderful seeing people trying to show support for family members and other people in their lives. Instead of immediately giving my suggestions, we're going to go ahead and look at the one really long answer that has already been given, and I'll see if I can think of anything that I want to add. Expensive Salad 3143 says, AFAB gender fluid here. Deodorant is always a good option when it comes to dispelling odor without giving off a very distinctive smell. I usually use the brand Secret and it does a good job. That's funny because when I was thinking about what are some vaguely feminine deodorants that actually work, Secret was the one that came to mind. It's a little bit difficult for me to think of options because I love the masculine scented deodorants. I always have, even before I transitioned. So I always go for the manly smells. I know it's just marketing, but I've always gone for the manly smells, right? But I have come across Secret before, and I remember it as working pretty decently.